I know I've seen at least 2 Thursday night football games where they've played the Jaguars. This time we've got a Thursday night matchup that might actually be very interesting. Titans and Steelers. We'll get into that. We're going to talk about Florida. Florida is a team that I feel like I've overlooked them in all of this coaching carousel stuff. Not necessarily in terms of talking about the coaching, because I feel like I've adequately explained the process that they are going through by which they could acquire Chip Kelly, and that they feel like they more or less have Chip Kelly in the bag. Now, those are just rumors. All of this stuff is just rumors. And I do have some Tennessee volunteer rumors for you as well about John Gruden and how I may be wrong about John Gruden. So we'll get into all of that. But first, I want to start with the UTC Mocs, who began their season 0-2, dropping both games to Wyoming and UAB to start the year, and now face Hiawassee College, a game that tipped off, if you were to believe the internet, about 10 minutes ago. And I think this is an important game for the Mocs because nobody wants to be at the bottom of the Southern Conference. And guess where the Mocs are currently located? At the bottom of the Southern Conference. And head coach Lamont Paris has come in and he's replacing Matt McCall. Matt McCall was a guy, he's seen as a bright up-and-coming head coach, right? He's a guy that everyone thought he was going to be. He's going to have his name in headlines for years. And he's a young guy. And he got the Mocs to the NCAA tournament. And once you do that, and I understand fully, because this is just the way that college athletics work, especially if you're a coach, you just got to capitalize on the situation. You just got to get in there, go ahead, make the name for yourself. And while your name is still hot on the market, if someone at a bigger school is going to offer you more, go ahead and do it. Now, I feel like if Matt McCall had allowed himself to have some more success with the Mocs, he might have found himself in a better situation than UMass. It's not like UMass is this great program. It's going to take some building. Now, he's capable of the job, and I'm not here to criticize Matt McCall, but Lamont Paris has got a job too, and that job is build UTC up to where they were when they made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. Tall order, right? Because he doesn't have a whole lot of depth. It's not a very big basketball team. It's 10 guys on the team. He also has a bunch of freshmen. So this is going to take a little bit of development and recruiting. It's going to be a while. I don't think anybody imagined that the Mocs were going to be this bad, this fast after Matt McCall went to Massachusetts to take that job with the Minutemen. I don't think that anybody expected this drop-off would be coming this quickly, because there's always a drop-off when you change coaches. There's a different philosophy, a different style. You're recruiting different kinds of players from different places. So I understand that there is some level of this is always going to be difficult for Lamont Paris. But this is a little sharper of a downturn than anybody thought, especially when you drop that first game to Wyoming, a game that you do expect to win, right? Like, I expected the Mocs to win that game, and I was I wasn't say pleasantly surprised, but I was surprised when they wound up losing that one, right? So they play Hiawassee College to get things back on track tonight. Hiawassee College is usually the third or fourth game on a UTC schedule since I have been covering the Mocs in this area. And yeah, that's usually the game that they just blow Hiawassee away. Now, I don't know if that's the way that this is going to wind up going down, that they're going to show up and they're just going to blow Hiawassee away. But you do need to win this game, because here's the reason why you need to win this game. One, if you win this game, you get a little confidence back. You put a W in the win column, get yourself going a little bit. Okay, we're not trying to break some kind of losing streak to start the year. That's one. But then there's the more negative aspect as well, which is if you don't beat Hiawassee College, what are you saying about your season? What are you saying about your season if you cannot beat Hiawassee College? I'm not entirely certain what that means for you, but I can tell you that it's not good, whatever it is that means. It's not a pretty picture that paints if you're not able to beat Hiawassee College. So, yeah, Mocs tonight, Hiawassee College. That game is starting right around now. I believe Larry Ward is on the call. I think we're all familiar with Larry. So, yeah, that's going to be, to me, an interesting game from that perspective. Now, I am a little disgruntled at the fact that, yeah, this is what passes for an interesting game this year. but get on the board. It's very important to get a win in the win column. You have to get one. Okay? It's just you, and I forget the name of the other school that's also at the bottom of the Southern Conference that started 0-2. But you don't want to be alone down there. Bottom of the standings is not a good place to be. It's not a great feeling. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. So Florida is a team that's very fascinating to me because we know that Florida's not good. They did a very good job of pretending to be good early in the year, but we knew they weren't good, right? You watch Florida play offense, and it is a struggle. It is a nightmare watching that team attempt to score the football. And defensively, they're not great either, right? They played a little weak competition earlier in the year. Then they were able to steal a victory from Tennessee, one that Butch Jones would dearly love to have had. And so we're watching it and we're going, okay, this is a Florida team. They're not good, but they're not the worst team in college football. Well, maybe they're not the worst team, but they're not doing so great, right? Like they're on life support. And they're playing UAB, the Blazers. And UAB's got a great story, right? Like this is the David and Goliath story. If you were making a movie, the main characters of this movie would be UAB. Rewind to 2 years ago, UAB disbanded their football program. The numbers weren't adding up money-wise, right? They were spending a lot of money. They weren't making a ton of money. They had to disband the football program. And I remember I listened to National Public Radio, and there's this heartwarming story about how UAB brought the Birmingham community together and how sad it was that UAB football was going away. Well, 2 years later, UAB football is back. UAB football is back, and they didn't waste any time trying to be good at all. UAB, 7 wins on the season, and not against the Little Sisters of the Poor. UAB has played decent talent this year, right? They've beaten Louisiana Tech. They've beaten Louisiana Lafayette. I mean, they've beaten some decent schools. And now they play the Florida Gators. And this should be a cupcake game because this is what the SEC does. The second to last week of the season is usually some kind of a cupcake game. And then you play your rival, right? For instance, Alabama is going to play Mercer this week. Then they play Auburn in the Iron Bowl. It goes something like that. Well, I mean, you figure what Tennessee's doing. Tennessee is going to play LSU, and then they're going to play their rival, who is Vanderbilt. So they got that thing in the wrong order. Difficulty. But the point is, UAB is supposed to be the cupcake school that Florida's playing, and UAB might not be a cupcake school. In fact, they're not. And all you need to do, and I understand that they haven't necessarily played equal levels of competition, but all you need to do to know that UAB is not the cupcake school is look at the numbers. You just need to look at where they are ranked offense and defense in the nation, right? UAB offensively in the nation, they're ranked 80th. And defensively in the nation, they're ranked 41st, rather. And this isn't great, right? Like, it's not great that they're ranked 80th and 41st. Except when you compare them to Florida. Florida, offensively in the nation, is ranked 115th. And defensively, they're ranked 54th. So they're behind UAB in total offense and total defense in the nation. And again, I know that they don't necessarily play the same level of competition, but it's the reason why Florida's behind UAB is not because of the level of competition. It's because Florida's bad. For Florida, yes. And so now the question is that bad enough to get beaten by UAB? And the answer to that question is absolutely it's bad enough to be beaten by UAB. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying I want it to happen because I'm here for those jokes. Now, I can't imagine how bad Gator fans are going to feel if they somehow lose to UAB. I can't even imagine. How bad could you possibly feel? How much worse could this season actually get if you manage to lose to UAB? Do you fire the interim head coach also? Like, what does that result in if you manage to lose to the Blazers, who did not have a football program for 2 years, and then they just showed up, right? And again, incredible story for the Blazers. I'm glad they've got their football team back. But how bad do you feel if that team shows up and works you in your own house, right? If the Blazers beat Florida, they'll be beating Florida in their own gym. How bad do you feel? I think you feel terrible. But Florida's perfectly capable of losing this game. That's how far this team has fallen. Right now, again, and they're missing a lot of talent. Like, we talk about Florida being bad this year like it was obvious. It wasn't obvious when they started the year, before they had basically half their team suspended. But their offense never got it together. They brought Jim McElwain in to fix the offense, and the offense never got it going. That is a problem. And now you're playing a school who can score, who can defend. And they're supposed to be the cupcake school you stomp out. What happens when that school upsets you? We've seen a little bit of it happen before. I believe Alabama a few years scheduled Georgia Southern as their cupcake school 3 years ago. It's 3 or 4 years ago now. Alabama scheduled Georgia Southern as their cupcake school, and Georgia Southern pulled off the upset and beat the Crimson Tide. Alabama still played at a national championship, though. Right? Like, they still played in a national title game. Like, this is not a school that if they lose that kind of game, they're ruined. Bama's not ruined. Now, granted, this year, a little iffier, right? Because you've still got to play Auburn the week after, and you might wind up playing Georgia the week after that. Like, that's not going to be a fun run if you manage to drop this game to Mercer if you're Bama. Don't think they will, but usually good enough to overcome that kind of thing. Florida's just playing for bowl eligibility. Like, can you imagine? This is terrible. This is terrible. And I find it deeply humorous. So there it is. I'm tossing you a bone there, Tennessee fans, because, Tennessee fans tell me that I come down on the Vols all the time. Why aren't I making jokes about anybody else? Which is, you know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. Here come the Florida jokes. Let Florida lose on Saturday to UAB somehow. There'll be a week of Florida jokes if we don't burn them all through the weekend. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio. NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. The phone number is 800-8949, 423-800-8949. If you want to call in and comment, you have any idea what's going to be happening in the SEC this weekend, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts and ideas on what's going to be happening later on in the show. But first, I do need to talk about the rumor mill, the Tennessee volunteer coaching rumor mill, because I said earlier this week that there is no way that John Gruden leaves ESPN to coach anywhere. But that includes Tennessee. Because I just think that job's really nice and not stressful at all. Right? And I understand coaches walk away from the game and really just itch to get back in the game. And John Gruden's been away from the game a really long time, so you can't help but think, well, this guy wants to get back in the game at some point. And he's been saying no to jobs. Every time there's a coaching opening, we tie that job to John Gruden. And it doesn't matter who it is, where the job is, What players are involved, we just tie it straight to Jon Gruden, because I think that somehow that's what we want. We want that guy to come back. My issue with that is, realistically, if I'm in Jon Gruden's shoes, I stay at ESPN. I haven't left the game of football. I'm still very much involved in the game. But also, I don't have to deal with rules and regulations and red tape. And we've seen this happen in government all the time. Guys go from business to politics and struggle a little bit and get frustrated, really frustrated with the way that bureaucracy works. Right? We're seeing it a little bit with President Trump. He's a businessman. He's a successful businessman. And then he goes to Washington and, we've been talking about repeal and replace Obamacare, and he gets there, and the Republicans aren't ready to repeal and replace Obamacare. And it's frustrating to him because if this were in the world of business, like, I can't imagine that he doesn't feel like he wouldn't have gotten it done already. It's sort of like that. If you're Jon Gruden, like, you've got the comfortable, I just sort of do whatever I want at ESPN job, and then you're going to throw me into college football where I've got rules and regulations, and this is the time where I can talk to recruits, and this is where I can't, and this is what I can give them, and this is what I can't. And it's nothing but red tape. I'm shocked. I'm literally shocked that anybody decides to be a college football coach at all. Right? Like, the money's great. And I understand why the money is great, because in order to get someone to put up with all of those headaches, you're going to have to pay them a lot of money. Only Jon Gruden already makes a lot of money. So why would he jump to the headaches? That's what I thought. Like, that's my thinking behind it. But then I saw a rumor today. Very credible source that said a bunch of Tennessee boosters and administrators were flying down to Tampa Bay to meet with Jon Gruden to talk to him about coming in to be the coach of the Vols. They were going to make the strong pitch, right? Basically, what they were going to give him, how much control he was going to have over the program. That there was a couple of flights that there were some journalists that were tracking, and they said, hey, there was a flight that left Knoxville, stopped in a couple of other places to pick up some boosters, went on down to Tampa Bay, where Jon Gruden is currently located, where they're allegedly going to talk to him about being the next head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers. And the fact that the meeting is happening at all is big news, because Jon Gruden has outright said no to everybody else that has offered him a coaching job. So I feel like there's a little bit of sentimentality in this decision, right? Because Jon Gruden's a Vol for life. And so having that guy look at that program and look at that program be in disarray, it's not fun for him. He was at the game this year. He was at the Alabama game this year. And I can't imagine. You're a Vol for life. And you're a big-time football fan. And you're a knowledgeable football fan. And you're looking at this program that you love. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, man, we could do better than that. We've got to be able to do better than that. Right? And Gruden's been saying no to every job, right? Doesn't even take the meetings. But he's taking this meeting. Ooh, he's taking this one. And so that means something. It means that there's a chance, right? Like he said, you never say never to nothing was what he said over the phone when he was asked about taking the job. So if Jon Gruden decides not to take this job, let's say, this is the closest that anybody has gotten to Jon Gruden coming back to coach since he retired. Being a college football coach is stressful. Like I understand why these guys make so much money. It is a stressful job. right? Remember Urban Meyer had to stop coaching at Florida because he was having heart problems because of his stress? Like he just had so much stress that his doctors were like, hey, you're going to have a heart attack if you don't stop coaching. You're going to die of heart disease. That's how much pressure you're under. And Urban Meyer was winning. That's the thing. He was under that much stress, and he was winning. Can you imagine? So, yeah, college football coaches making a lot of money. It seems ridiculous and unnecessary, but I get it. I 100% get it. I'm just trying to figure out why, if someone had the job that Jon Gruden currently has, which is Monday Night Football, and you see Jon Gruden being silly on Monday Night Football, playing around with the shake weight, wearing a sombrero, all the other goofy antics that he's been done on that show, but he still gets to be around football, and he doesn't have to worry about deadlines and administrators and a fan base that's expecting a victory. Because you understand, Jon Gruden comes back to coach at Tennessee. The fans are going to expect success sooner rather than later. They're not going to give Jon Gruden as long as they gave Butch Jones to turn this thing around. I don't think. Because there is a certain expectation that this guy is a better coach. And you've seen programs that have been able to turn around incredibly quickly. You see Harbaugh go to Michigan and turn it around. You see Franklin go to Penn State and build it up. So there's an expectation that things can happen because you've seen it. You've seen other coaches do it, and you go, well, why not us? You saw Mark Richt go to Miami, the Hurricanes, and turn it around. So you've seen other coaches do it, guys that you consider to be really good coaches. And if you consider those guys to be really good coaches, your expectation level for them winning is going to be higher, and you are not going to take struggling for an answer. Not if you're a Vol fan. I don't think that they give Jon Gruden as much space and leeway as they ever gave Butch Jones. But that's just me. You're listening to Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM. We're going to talk about the Titans and the Steelers a little bit later on, and we're going to pick some of these SEC games coming up on Saturday. Next.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
A car chase with a stolen vehicle in Hamilton County. A sheriff's office deputy first spotted the vehicle, which was reported as stolen, just outside Chattanooga city limits. He chased the car into Chattanooga. Then police officers joined in on the chase. The car then went all the way over to Red Bank, where Red Bank police officers joined in. The car was eventually pulled over. 2 juveniles jumped out and tried to run away on foot. Police officers chased them down, tackled them, took them into custody. 2 juveniles' names had not been released, and the vehicle was recovered. 3 arrests in 2 cases, both murder cases out of Grundy County. In the first, Daniel Chandler was arrested in the murder case of his wife, who was found dumped in the woods. And in the second case, a man from Tracy City was found shot 4 times, his body also dumped in the woods. 2 suspects have been arrested in that case. They're both out of North Carolina. The cases are not connected. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Now.
Expect cloudy skies to continue through your nighttime. Can't rule out a sprinkle or light shower, but not much. Lows not as cool, into the upper 40s. For Thursday and Friday, some good-looking weather on the way. More sunshine, comfortable highs into the lower to middle 60s overnight, lows upper 30s. Experience the wonder of Ruby Falls Christmas Underground on a magical journey to visit Santa. Discover Christmas cheer on this heartwarming adventure. For tickets and details, go to rubyfalls.com. And I'm Storm Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Hi, this is Sonia with the Mountain Oaks Weddings, Events, and Tea Room in Ottawa, located in the former James County Courthouse. Go back in style when you're planning your next event. Mountain Oaks is a full-service wedding venue and catering facility. No fuss, no mess, no cleanup when you schedule your next special event with Mountain Oaks. Leave the planning and the work to the experts, but take all the credit for your wonderful event. Call me, Sonia, at Mountain Oaks today at 423-238-9333 and leave the work to us.
423-238-9333 or stop by our location on Church Street in Ottawa.
Pulse Centers of Chattanooga offers non-medical solutions to your body's problems using a state-of-the-art technology called pulsed electromagnetic fields, PEMF for short. We help fuel the body's natural healing response. If you're tired of taking harmful, addictive drugs that only dull your pain and cause awful side effects, the knowledgeable, friendly staff at Pulse Centers can help you end that cycle.
Call to schedule a free whole body assessment at 423-771-7755. That's 423-771-7755. An automated nuclear missile defense system has suddenly entered into launch mode, and you are the only one who can stop it. Escape Experience Chattanooga. Your team has just been infected with a deadly virus. Your only hope? There, in an abandoned farmhouse. Escape Experience Chattanooga. Handcuffed in a maximum security prison, you have an hour to flee. Escape Experience Chattanooga. These escape scenarios and more at Chattanooga's best escape room, game, and team building platform. Call now. Slots are limited. Register online at escapeexperience.com/Chattanooga. Escape Experience Chattanooga.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
You're listening to Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you listening, however it is that you do, whether it's on the radio, on the website, NoogaRadio.com, or streaming live on YouTube. You search Nooga Radio on YouTube as well. You'll be able to find us. Thursday night football action. We'll get to the NFL in just a second. Just want to talk about college football a little bit. Just give you some of my college football picks. And this is going to be really fast. This is actually going to be probably the quickest that I've gone through the SEC picks that I've done, because nobody's playing anybody this week, right? Like, and this is one of the big criticisms of the SEC, is that they have weak schedules. And that's not true. The SEC does not have weak scheduling, but this week, for whatever reason, everyone does their little tune-up game before the rivalry games the week after, and everyone points to this week to say, hey, the SEC is not playing anybody, which is true this week, right? So we'll start with the first game as an example. Alabama versus Mercer. There is no line. Like, Vegas didn't even bother to give a line to this one. Alabama's going to beat the brakes off of Mercer. And Mercer's not bad. They're 5-5, but they're 5-5 in the Southern Conference. Come on now. Alabama's going to destroy them. That's 12 o'clock on the SEC network. Auburn versus Louisiana Monroe. Auburn 8-2, Louisiana Monroe 4-5. Auburn is a 36.5-point favorite. And the points. Louisiana Monroe, I don't know if Louisiana Monroe scores. I don't think so. Next game, Miss State versus Arkansas, which this one's a pretty fascinating one, right? Brett Bielema, maybe still coaching for his job a little bit. The athletic director's out. There's like a 10% chance that Brett Bielema keeps his job, but not if he loses to Miss State, who's an 11.5-point favorite over the Hogs. I haven't seen Arkansas show me that they can beat SEC opponents this year. And Mississippi State hung with Alabama last week, and I really like Fitzgerald. I like him a lot. And I think that he probably cruises through this Arkansas defense, because this defense has not been stable or solid in any particular kind of way this year. Next game, Kentucky and Georgia. Georgia's trying to keep this thing on the rails. Now, they are 21.5-point favorites over the Wildcats. The Wildcats, by the way, are 7-3. Georgia's 9-1. And they need a little bit of help if they're going to work their way back into the college football playoff. Not that it's impossible, right? But they're going to need some help from Oklahoma, who's in front of them now. And they're going to need some help from Auburn, who's in front of them now. Though I would say instead of winning, they'd need Auburn to probably hit Alabama a little bit. So I'm looking at Kentucky's schedule, by the way, because Kentucky had one really bad loss to Florida. They lost to Florida 28-27. And I think Kentucky's better than Florida. Like, if you just asked me on a talent perspective, who's better? I think Kentucky is actually better than Florida. And if Kentucky had beaten Florida like they were supposed to, right? Or beaten Mississippi, beaten Ole Miss, then guess what? Kentucky would be playing Georgia right now for an opportunity to go to the SEC title game. This Saturday, that would be the game. That would be the storyline. But instead, Kentucky drops one or two games that they shouldn't have dropped on their way to a title. And it's going to be Georgia in the SEC title game pretty much no matter what happens in this game. But Georgia is the overwhelming favorite, and they should be. Their defense is solid. We'll see, though, if Georgia's able to add a second dimension to this football team, because they're one-dimensional. That's been the only criticism you could have of them all year long, is they're a one-dimensional football team. They run the ball. Take away the run, and what's Georgia? Not good enough to beat you. If you can take away the run. It's hard to do, but Auburn's been able to do it, and there is no doubt in my mind that Alabama will be able to do it if they're able to play Alabama in the SEC title game. No doubt. But I'll take Georgia in this game and the points. Why not? I don't think Kentucky even covers. South Carolina is going to play Wofford. That's their cupcake opponent. And I expect South Carolina to trounce over Wofford. Wofford, by the way, though, 9-1 in the Southern Conference. I believe they got into a close game with the Mocs a couple of weeks back. But yeah, Wofford here versus South Carolina. Just because you're the class of the Southern Conference doesn't mean that you're good enough to hang with an SEC school. South Carolina's been pretty decent this year and certainly good enough to beat Wofford. Granted, if South Carolina doesn't bring their A game, we might be looking at an upset alert. Speaking of upset alert, because I was talking about it earlier, Florida, UAB. The Gators are 10.5-point favorites in this game, but I'll take UAB and the points. I'll take UAB to at least cover. I haven't seen anything out of Florida that suggests to me that this football team has got anything to play for, right? It looks like their heart's not in it. It looks like they're not really competing. They're offensively hamstrung anyway, so they don't look good and have not looked good on that side of the football all year. If something has stepped up for Florida, it's been their defense, and UAB is going to have trouble scoring on this. But granted, UAB is a very good offensive and defensive unit as well. They're better ranked than Florida in both categories, nationally speaking, albeit that they haven't played as good a competition. I'm going to take UAB in the upset. That'll be 4 p.m. on the SEC network. I don't have anything against the Gators. I just think it'll be funnier that way. I root for the humor here. Texas A&M and Ole Miss, 7 p.m. on ESPN2. 2.5-point favorites are the Rebels over the Aggies. I don't see it. I know why that they're 2.5-point favorites. They're the home team. You know, then they're going to get that Vegas boost. But Texas A&M is the better football team here. Granted, Ole Miss does look the part, right? Like, Ole Miss sometimes looks like a really good football team. I don't think that Matt Luke is going to keep the job there, but I'm just saying Ole Miss looks the part every now and then. But with all the sanctions that they're dealing with, I don't know that that's going to be something that is fruitfully going to. They're not going to keep Matt Luke. You know, that to me is too much of playing it safe. Ole Miss has got to take a risk if they want this to turn out better, if they want to be moving in a positive direction. LSU, Tennessee, 7 p.m. on ESPN. 15.5-point favorites are the Tigers over the Vols. And yeah, that looks generous to me. I think that LSU probably beats Tennessee by more than 15.5 points, to be honest with you, but at least 15. I think that the Vols are going to struggle here because defensively, they haven't shown a propensity to stop anybody on the ground or in the air. The secondary is worse than the ground defense, right? Like the secondary is worse than the line, but it ain't by much. This is just not a good football team, right? And this game is going to be interesting to keep an eye on because as the John Gruden rumors heat up and as the Tennessee coaching rumors heat up, this game is going to be more and more telling as to whether or not the Vols decide to play it safe and keep Brady Hoke or move in the direction of replacing him with literally anybody else, right? Now, John Gruden trumps everybody in this equation. If they're able to get Gruden, it doesn't really matter what Hoke does. He's not keeping the job. But if they can't get Gruden for whatever reason, and word on the street is, scuttlebutt around the league is, they are pitching John Gruden right now. If they're not able to get Gruden for whatever reason, Brady Hoke could be coaching for his job if he's able to get a W over LSU. I'd have to think so. And the last game of the night is at 7:30 p.m. on the SEC Network, Missouri versus Vanderbilt. I expect Missouri to beat Vanderbilt because Missouri's offense is that potent, and Vanderbilt's defense, which started the year as a historically good defense for Vanderbilt standards, not great halfway through the season. They fell off. They really have fallen off, and teams have figured them out. And Missouri and how prolific they can be offensively, looking to end this season strong after a slower start. I've been very impressed with Missouri. The over-under on this game, by the way, is 66.5 points. How much you want to bet most of that's going to be Missouri? Because when Missouri beats you, they don't just beat you. They beat you bad. They drop about 50, 60 points on you when they beat you. It's a little insane. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. We've got the NFL tonight, Thursday Night Football on CBS and on Amazon Prime. For those of you who just want to pull it up on your computer, maybe you've already cut the cord, you don't even have cable, whatever the case may be, this is the future of the way that sports are going, right? And actually, I think that this is fascinating to me because if ESPN decides not to pick back up Monday Night Football, expect one of those digital networks to try and grab Monday Night Football, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Hulu, whether it's Netflix. I expect one of those companies to make a real grasp at this because people are cutting the cord on cable. Like we talk about how much money ESPN is losing. Now, you could make a very strong argument that the NFL is not gaining money because of player protests. But ESPN covers more sports than just the NFL. Like the NFL is a big deal, but ESPN covers the NBA and Major League Baseball. They've got Sunday Night Baseball. They've got college hoops. They've got college football. ESPN's losing money because people are dropping cable and dropping satellite TV in favor of just watching all their favorite shows digitally. And so that's where those companies are going to start coming in. And I imagine that Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon Prime are going to step in and try and figure out how they're going to monetize live sports. Amazon Prime is already doing it with Thursday Night Football. Hulu is already doing it with hockey. And if Monday Night Football were to come available and ESPN were not to take it back, expect one of those three companies to try and figure out if it's worth all the money to try and grab it. But anyway, tonight, the Titans, Steelers. It's a good game. It's a good game that we've got going on here. And the reason why I think this is going to be a really good game is that, A, you've got two teams who are trying to be at the top of their division, right? The Steelers are at the top of their division. They're trying to keep it. They're trying to hold off everybody else. The Bengals seem to be surging as of late. And the Ravens are 4-5, which just means that generally they're not really out of it. Right? And the Titans are not at the top of their division. The Titans are second place to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I imagine absolutely zero people saw coming, because I know I didn't. At 6-3, the Titans would be able to move ahead into first place if they're able to beat the Steelers tonight. And the thing that I like about Tennessee, more than anything else is the construction of their football team, right? Like, I'm not a huge fan of their head coach, Mike Mularkey. I think the exotic smash mouth thing doesn't really work. I think that it's not the best of their running game, and it's not quite the best of their passing game, and it winds up being in this no man's land territory. And I like Mariota. I think that Mularkey doing it this way is holding back Mariota a ton in terms of his development. I really am a fan of how they run the football, though. I'm a big fan of DeMarco Murray and what he's been able to do as a Tennessee Titan, betting on himself and deciding to be a Titan. And then they drafted Derrick Henry out of Alabama, and Derrick Henry is a capable back as well. And they've got two big, strong, fast backs. You can pound it at the goal line with either one. Doesn't really matter. And then you've got Mariota, whose red zone efficiency since he's been in the league is one of the top players in the league, though he has struggled with that this season. And I just think the Tennessee's got the edge here in terms of both sides of the football being consistent, right? The Pittsburgh's been up and down, and even last week, a busted coverage helped them win their game. So I'm just not 100% sold on the Steelers. I think that their division is bad this year. I think the Ravens are hanging around. I think the Bengals have drastically underperformed, and the Browns are 0-9. They're the Browns, right? And I just think they're the result of succeeding in a weak division. I don't know how good the Steelers really, truly are this season. But I will say this. Antonio Brown is still going out there making things hell for defenses, and they've really found something with this Juju Smith-Schuster. This young guy at wide receiver has shown up, and he's kind of been the next big star for them. I mean, Martavis Bryant was a little bit disgruntled. He asked for a trade and all of that good stuff. And ever since they added Juju Smith-Schuster to the roster, to the lineup, he's been lights out. And he's been amazing. And this offense looks every bit as potent as it's always been. And then you factor in Le'Veon Bell. You're able to contain Le'Veon Bell, you can beat the Steelers. The problem is it's almost impossible to contain Le'Veon Bell. It's a difficult place to be. I'm not entirely certain what it is that you do to slow that guy down. You just kind of pray that he has a bad day. I don't know. Maybe he woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Whatever the case may be on that one. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Our phone number is 800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. And I look over at the NFC, and I see the NFC as being the better conference of the two, right? Between the NFC and the AFC. People think of the AFC as being better, but really it's because the Patriots are there. And the Patriots have been so successful holding up the banner for that whole conference, essentially. Between the Patriots and the Steelers, they've run that conference for the last 10 years. And wherever Peyton Manning's happened to be, more or less, right? Like that's pretty much been it. But when I look at it, the NFC has the stronger teams overall. But here's the thing. The NFC is also the more wide open conference. You've got a ton of teams in the NFC that are hanging around that 4-5, 5-4 spot. They're just trying to see if they can get that wild card spot and get into the playoffs. Redskins hanging around at 4-5. The Lions hanging around at 5-4. The Packers hanging around at 5-4. The Cardinals hanging around at 4-5. The Cowboys 5-4. The Falcons 5-4. Something's got to give with one of these teams. Because when I look at all of these teams, I see teams that are 5-4 and 4-5 largely because they've underperformed. Not at all because they've been bad. Not at all because they're even inconsistent. They've just underperformed, right? Matt Stafford and the Lions, they get that huge contract to Stafford in order to keep him. And they start off pretty hot. I believe they started the season 3-0. But they don't seem to be able to move the ball and get it into the end zone consistently. I remember there was a game, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Matthew Stafford throws for 500 yards or something like that. He didn't throw a single touchdown in the game. just couldn't get in the end zone. Underachieving. Look at the Packers, 5-4. Now they're underachieving, and it's not really their fault. They lost Aaron Rodgers, and you lose Aaron Rodgers, you're going to play below what people thought you were going to play at the beginning of the season. Granted, Brett Hundley looking a whole lot better for the Pack than I thought that he would be. I thought Brett Hundley, the young man out of where did Brett Hundley play? Was it UCLA? Brett Hundley played a whole lot better than I thought he was going to play as a starter for the Packers, right? Like, now, obviously, you can't replace Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to replace Aaron Rodgers and fill his shoes very well. But Brett Hundley looked pretty good. The Cardinals are 4-5. I don't know if you can say that they've underachieved, but there's something that I figure you got to say for the Cardinals, which is this. Get a quarterback. And I understand that they're riding this thing out with Carson Palmer, but Carson Palmer is old, right? Like, he got old real fast all of a sudden, as it always tends to go. He got really old, and we're still out here riding Carson Palmer. Why don't you draft a quarterback already? Like, find a guy. Last year's draft was filled with quarterbacks, which is insane to me that they didn't try and grab one and all of that. The Redskins are 4-5. They're underachieving, but they're underachieved. I mean, that's normal for the Redskins, right? Like, the Redskins, when you look at their roster, and I know they've had some injuries, but when you look at their roster, should be better than 4-5. And you look at some of the games that they've lost, you scratch your head. They're able to slow down Russell Wilson and the Seahawks 1 week and beat them, and then allow Case Keenum the next week to just rip them for 420 some odd yards. I mean, you'll never understand the Redskins. I don't. I've been rooting for them almost my entire life. And you're just never going to understand this football team. Yeah, underachieving is their nature. Underachieving is normal for them. And the Cowboys, look, they're underachieving, but in large part last week they didn't have they didn't have Zeke. They didn't have Zeke Elliott. And they're not going to have Zeke Elliott. He's going to serve out the rest of his suspension for the rest of the year. I always thought that Zeke Elliott should have just served the suspension from the beginning. If he didn't try to keep appealing, then the suspension would be up by now, right? And then maybe the Cowboys get some wins over some bad teams, and maybe they're 4-5 with Ezekiel Elliott coming back rather than 5-4, and they lose him for what is essentially the rest of the regular season. And then maybe if they play their cards correctly, they make the postseason and they get him back. Maybe. Should have just served the suspension on the front end. I do have one thought before I go on the Buffalo Bills, because they benched Tyrod Taylor in favor of Nathan Peterman. And I like Nathan Peterman a lot. I wasn't a big Nathan Peterman guy, in the combine and really just coming out of college. But I was convinced Lance Zierlein, who is a radio host in Houston, he's also an analyst for a draft analyst for NFL Network. He was on this show around the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl was in Houston. So I had him on to talk about the Super Bowl. And he's a big Nathan Peterman guy. Really liked Nathan Peterman coming out and thought of the quarterbacks that you could get later in the draft, Nathan Peterman's that guy, right? And I felt like the Bills were looking for any excuse to bench Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor didn't really give him an excuse. He's been playing good quality football all year, but they went ahead and benched him in favor of Nathan Peterman. And to me, this is a travesty. I don't like it when teams do this, where you bench a guy that's playing well because you have another person that you just really want to play. Like, I just want to play Nathan Peterman. You go with the guy that's good, right? You just gave Tyrod Taylor the extension. He restructured the contract so it was more team-friendly, and you still went ahead and found a way to bench the guy. My thing with Tyrod Taylor is this. Tyrod Taylor doesn't play the part of a quarterback that we traditionally look at that position, right? We don't typically look at a guy like Tyrod Taylor as playing the quarterback position. He's a scrambler. He does a lot of offbeat things. He's short. He's small. He doesn't have a big-time arm. But we make this mistake over and over and over again with quarterbacks who are big and strong and not any good. Jameis Winston, I'm not saying he's not any good, but he looks like he looks the part of a quarterback. Blake Bortles looks the part. Brock Osweiler looks the part. And I can give you a list as long as my arm of guys who look the part and actually aren't any good. And here's Tyrod Taylor, who's actually pretty good. He doesn't look the part, and that's why he's losing his job. And that to me is just a sham. Like, oh yeah, really, he's just not tall. Okay, but he's better than Blake Bortles, right? He's even better than Nathan Peterman, the guy you started over him. Just madness. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch. I'll see you, I don't know, 10 minutes? Two Millennials Talk. Next.
95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM.